Senator Pate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Senators, today as I rise to speak in support of Senator Wu's motion, I recognize this is the second anniversary of horrific attacks by Hamas during the holiest time of year for Jewish people. My heart, thoughts, and prayers are with the millions of people whose lives have ended or were forever impacted by those events. They're also with those whose lives have been destroyed and continue to deal with the anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial that Senator Wu so appropriately addressed. We must end those discriminations. We must end anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, period. We must also come to face with the lives of those who have been destroyed by the unending horrors of the escalating violence in Gaza, the West Bank, Israel, and Lebanon. The motion rightly calls on the federal government to examine the risk to Canada and Canadians of complicity in violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza in light of the findings and orders by both the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. Canadians who have been in Gaza, including as doctors and aid workers, no strangers to humanitarian and human rights crises, have struggled to describe the extent of the atrocities they have witnessed. Alex Neve, who is delivering this year's Massey lectures focused on the state of international human rights, has stated simply that the word, quote, apocalyptic seems insufficient, end quote. The tens of thousands dead from bullets and bombardments, but also malnutrition and diseases, most of them women and children, quote, shatter the collective heart of humanity, end quote. Canada has a reputation as a country committed to human rights and justice. This motion asks the government to do the bare minimum in line with those commitments, to assess whether we are complicit in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Tens of thousands have died. Civilians live in constant fear of grief. Homes, schools, and hospitals have been destroyed. International law is being ignored. World leaders are failing to pursue peace and justice, enabling war through arms and silence. A decade ago, I was involved in work with academics and civil society organizations like the International Crisis Group to designate Gaza as an open-air prison. The goal was to draw attention to conditions that even then were dire: restrictions on movement, impassable borders, and people trapped without regard to safety or human rights. I was struck by how few people felt able to speak out. Many knew the reality but chose silence as a result of political costs or calculations or the risks of being accused of anti-Semitism or disloyalty. Today, as the evidence of violations of international law mounts, the risk of backlash increases, and yet the cost of silence also becomes ever more dangerous. To quote Naomi Klein, there's a great deal of effort to suppress an honest examination of what has happened in Gaza and what is ongoing in Gaza. This has to do with an escalation of attacks on the Palestine solidarity movement globally, using these anti-terror laws to intimidate funders, to intimidate universities, to intimidate all of civil society. All of Gaza is a crime scene. It's too large a crime to cover up, so all you can do is target the witnesses. That is what the war on journalists, the killing of so many courageous Palestinian journalists in Gaza, has been about. It's been about getting rid of the witnesses. We need to understand what this is about. This is about not calling a genocide, not doing the research, presenting any of it as a form of anti-Semitism. This is neo-McCarthyism. This is an attempt to shut down discussion because the evidence is so overwhelming. I teach at a university, and you would think that we would be talking about this in every classroom, but the chill is real. I visit universities, I talk at universities, and I've been approached by so many students who have told me their professors will not talk about this in class. I don't think we can underestimate the extent to which this chilling effect can work. but thankfully we still have courageous human rights defenders, including working within the UN system, like Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, who are going to continue the pressure for an arms embargo, for the types of strategies that we need at all of our institutions to divest from companies that are involved in the systematic violation of human rights." End of quote. Many of us know by heart the words that German pastor Martin Niemöller used to condemn his initial inaction and that of others around him as the horrors of the Holocaust unfolded. It goes like this. "First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me." End quote. How many times must those of us in places of relative privilege learn the brutal lesson that human rights violations are never just someone else's problem? There is no such thing as staying silent or looking away without consequence. In Gaza, we see the deadly costs. Canada's recent action to formally recognize the state of Palestine is an important diplomatic step. It does not, however, absolve us of further obligations or protect us from complicity in breaches of international humanitarian and human rights law. The international court processes highlighted by this motion underscore that every country will eventually be called to answer for what it did or failed to do. In Gaza, it is not just Canada's reputation on the line. We're at risk of undermining the international institutions that we helped build and all that we work for and hope for at home and globally: justice, equality, and peace. We cannot turn away now and send the message that international law is optional or subject to political expediency. The motion before us is a vital step toward accountability with respect to the Geneva Conventions, the Genocide Convention, and Canada's own Charter of Rights and Freedoms and Values. Upholding these obligations will mean working with international allies to bring about peace, secure humanitarian access to Gaza, and support the work of international courts. Canada must also take steps at home to stop any remaining arms exports and other economic ties to those violating international law. We must also oppose dehumanizing rhetoric wherever it occurs, understanding the role it all too often plays as a first and calculated step toward eroding human rights and inciting violence. Colleagues, history judges not only those who commit atrocities, but also those who stand silently by while they are committed. It is not enough for Canada to champion human rights while refusing to investigate credible evidence that our trade, diplomatic, and military policies may be enabling war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Those most marginalized and vulnerable may bear the costs of our silence first, but eventually it will reach all of us. Today, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to ensure Canada finds the courage to do what is right and reaffirm our commitment to human rights at home and abroad. Miigwech, merci, thank you.